Push up. All right. For those that didn't catch my introduction, I'm Jake Athey, VP of Go-to-Market and Sales for Acquia. Acquia is a digital experience platform, one of the partners to Ferrero, and we provide content management, digital experience optimization, and brand management solutions. I'm focused on the digital asset management and product experience management portion of our content and AI business. And so this topic is right at home with me and with us as we talk about content at speed. And this does build on nicely to a lot of the conversation of the day so far. So we're talking about leveraging AI to transform traditional content creation. And this is appropriate for brands of all shapes and sizes, for marketers wherever you're at in your career. And looking forward to the insights that Shiva has to share with us here today. And I'm excited about this because Shiva has a lot of experience in this realm. So this is a fireside chat Q&A panel. Get your questions ready. We expect to have some time for questions here at the end. So with that, Shiva, introduce yourself, please.
All right, perfect. Looks like I got it right. So I'm with Ferrero, as has been introduced already. I'm sure you folks know Ferrero Rocher quite well, especially going into the holiday season. I'm working as a shopper experience lead. I've worked in consumer goods for quite some time. Everything from Ferrero's direct competitor, Mars Wrigley, to various other consumer goods companies and so on. So I've seen a lot of changes in the last few years coming along in the consumer goods space with digital transformation, with the implementation of large language models, artificial intelligence. Anyway, we'll get into all that fun stuff here. I won't make it far too technical. And over at Ferrero, I'm leading everything from shopper marketing to e-com, marketing, display, media, etc. So. Looking forward to getting into this chat.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Shiva, for your introduction here. And we've got a few topics that we'd like to cover that are consistent with the theme of the day. And the first one does deal with the application of large language models in marketing. And so based on your experience and the organizations that you've worked with and those that you've learned from or taken some inspiration from, how are companies of various sizes currently leveraging LLMs or large language models to enhance their marketing strategies? And what are some of the challenges they face in implementing these technologies effectively that you've experienced?
Yeah. Before getting into LLMs, let's talk about. I'm sure most of you here have heard about LLMs to some degree or the other. ChatGPT, that's your LLM right there, right? Before all of that was NLPs, natural language processing. You had these early models where you could just go on Google, start searching in natural language as opposed to typing in some sort of very IT-esque query, right? And here we are now with LLMs. We see a lot of implementation. We see my previous role before Ferrero, I was over at Mars Wrigley leading their digital transformation function. Right? One of the things that was a key part of their digital transformation function is enabling analytics from a simplified large language model standpoint. Right? When we think about analysts and when we think about analytics, and especially in the shopper marketing, digital media space, we pull in all this data, but we don't necessarily look at the data from a simplified large language model lens. We're often looking at the data from another Excel sheet, 10 Excel sheets fired back and forth, and so on and so forth. So this is where I think what we're starting to see with large language models now is we're starting to see more models implemented through, it could be Amazon-based large language models, GPT-based large language models, and so on and so forth, that enable us to process all that data in a simplified manner. Right? This has also given us an opportunity to work with our agency partners and internally and so on to be able to share with senior leadership teams the successes that we have, be able to provide that access to that data for the senior leadership teams, as opposed to just restrict that to the technical folks.
All right, yeah, thank you for getting us started with that. Let's talk about generative AI and content creation and your point of view on that. Now, in what ways has Gen AI transformed the content creation landscape, particularly in terms of reducing barriers to entry for smaller brands and startups and marketers that you've experienced their adoption with. So share some examples of successful implementations in the wild.
Yeah. There's tons of these, right? Gen AI has another common phrase that I'm sure you guys have all heard at this point. There's ChatGPT, then there's AI, then there's Gen AI. Gen AI, the whole idea being that you can generate content, right, without too much of a barrier. When you think about what used to be the case even 5-10 years ago with content generation, you had to go to creative agencies, you had to have spend minimum, and when you think of smaller companies, they had their barriers reduced to entry when Amazon opened up those doors to launching a product with a single ASIN or with a single SKU or whatnot. But the challenge for those guys still was, how do you then advertise with the big guys when you have to hire content agencies, right? When you can't really afford that, when you don't quite have the spend minimums and so on. So now generative AI undoes that challenge, or rather reverses that challenge, and propels the smaller companies to be able to get into that advertising space, to be able to create video ads, to be able to create very, very clean looking product shots, lifestyle images, and so on and so forth, right? I think this is where we see the evolution of not just retail and not just enabling retail for smaller players, but also enabling retail media access to smaller players. Right? This is where we start seeing, and I've seen this with, I've done some work with venture capital as well in the past, and I work with this company called Spirity. Not sure if anybody's heard of, but they make these mocktails, right? They sell on Amazon primarily, and they've just gotten into other spaces as well, traditional retail, brick and mortar, and so on. But in the early days, when they were working on Amazon primarily, that was one of their challenges, being able to actually create content without spending a ton of money. Now they're able to do that. Right? Amazon's got an AI creative studio, I believe. It's launched recently. They've got a few other, they've got a video generator as well. I don't know if any of y'all have been up to, have seen the news about the $200 a month GPT, but it's part of this ChatGPT offering. But what's evolving now is they're opening up options to be able to talk and not just type text as GPT creates content, right? You can talk your way into creating content, and it takes a matter of minutes. It doesn't take hours anymore. You don't have to wait on an agency. You don't have to wait on approvals. You want to do your A/B testing? Wonderful. You can land 10 different types of creatives to 10 different sets of audiences, right? Without having to worry about, how much is this going to cost me? Do I have a large enough audience to test my different creatives, to test my different content, and so on and so forth. Right? So to that end, I think the biggest focus here is really reduction on barriers to entry. Right? We don't have as many barriers to entry anymore, so the smaller players can truly compete with the bigger guys.
Yeah, like a couple of things you said there with regards to access and enablement to really equip any marketer with the tools to meet their customers where they are today. Now, let's talk about AI's role in shopper marketing, where you lead at Ferrero. Now, how is AI being utilized in your realm, and what potential do you see for AI to further personalize and optimize the consumer shopping experience?
Some of you all might have heard, Jake, I'm sure you may have heard too, it's AI's evolving search. Google's got a AI-based search now, right? And Walmart was one of the big ones on the retail side that has AI search at this point. So everyone's wondering, what is the difference between search and AI search, right? You're still typing a word in there. Maybe you're typing a phrase in there. So what's the big difference, right? AI search is interesting. It's in essence a modified version of traditional search, but it's modified significantly enough such that it makes sense to call it AI search, right? Walmart has this principle, and most machine learning models do. I'm not going to dive into machine learning models right now. We're not going to make it that technical, right? I don't want to lose all my audience in one go. You know, they have this mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive principle when they build these AI search models. And it's the same thing that Google does, that Walmart does, and so on. So from a shopper standpoint, now you're able to think of recommendations, right? Recommendations that you weren't previously searching for necessarily. But how does that happen? How that happens is you think of it as, here's mutually exclusive. What's mutually exclusive? Heads or tails. You can't have both. It's going to be one or the other, right? So you have somebody searching for A or B. Right? You don't have both. There's no overlap. Collectively exhaustive, meaning cover my entire space of possible outcomes. So AI search enables both. It's not going to go overlap things that you're not looking for. Instead, it excludes two different things, right? So anyway, long story short, when I think about what this does for the shopper experience and the shopper journey and whatnot, now you're able to actually search for planned events. Let's say you're planning a football party, right? A Super Bowl party or whatnot. You're able to plan for that Super Bowl party without necessarily having the list of items you're searching for. Because when you look at a user search behavior, you got 15 different things they might be searching for, right? To plan for that Super Bowl party. But now, AI-based search is actually able to just give you those recommendations. It's able to pick up on user behavior as well. So maybe it's Valentine's Day, maybe it's holiday season. This time of year, particularly for a company like Ferrero, holiday season matters a lot, right? What you start seeing is recommendations on search for more premium items, right? As AI starts picking up on that user behavior. Right? And you can really personalize that recommendation, really personalize that user behavior to enable a cleaner shopping experience, a more streamlined one that isn't littered with searches and just product recommendations everywhere. Right?
That's real good. Mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. That's the term to write down and further research. So I like that. All right. Let's talk about how you're driving more data-driven solutions for your business and how you've seen other organizations that you've worked with go about this. So how can mid-size retailers and marketers and brands harness more AI-backed solutions to really compete more with the larger players in the market? And what role does access to these comprehensive data sets play in this process? You talked a little bit about this, but further expand on that, and I think it's really great for this audience to hear.
Yeah. Jake, this is a great question. So, mid-sized retailers, one of the things that's interesting about use of data is you need to have enough of a data set to be able to make meaningful insights out of it, to be able to target your audiences correctly, create those audience pools, and so on and so forth, right? So when you think about mid-sized retailers, everyone wants data and everybody's trying to use their first-party data and so on. Mid-sized retailers don't often have enough of it, right? You take a company like Criteo, a platform like Criteo, for example. One of the things that they've thrived with is being able to enable AI-based access for those mid-sized retailers by using their platform-wide and large pool of consumers and the data that they have from that large pool of consumers. So it's this idea of pooled consumer data that in turn backs the AI, which becomes accessible for mid-sized retailers.
All right. Yeah, very good. Real good insights. Let's talk about the future for our last question before we open it up for audience Q&A. So looking ahead, what are some of the emerging trends in AI and MarTech that you're looking at for the year ahead that other marketers in the room should be aware of? And how can we prepare to integrate these advancements into our strategies for 2025?
Yeah, future's definitely exciting for MarTech, for AI as a whole, and so on. Not to necessarily drive this too far, but from a MarTech standpoint, some of the things that we're starting to see from ad tech, MarTech content creation standpoint, we're just at the beginning of capitalizing on Gen AI. we're just at the beginning of those content creation tools, being able to use Copilot, getting the right folks certified, the right talent behind it, and so on. I think it's always interesting that there's so much talk about AI replacing human workforce. There's so much talk about AI replacing certain functions and so on and so forth. We just talked about generative AI and how creative agencies perhaps are not as necessary, at least for the smaller players, right? There's an element of replacement there. So I see it the other way. What I see happening across most of the organizations that I've worked for across industries is quite to the contrary. It's not actually replacing creative agencies so much as it's enabling creative agencies to do more of those A/B test and learns, right? To do more content creation. It's not hampering the creative agencies. It's enabling them to do more. So it's not a scenario where we see that elimination happening. So when I think about the future of AI, I think there's going to be a lot of cool things that are coming up, right? Whether it's mobile ad space, whether it's content creation, generative AI through voice, which is just getting started, right? It would be really cool for us to stop typing those things that we want Copilot to create, right? It would be really cool just for us to talk it out and see what Copilot actually comes up with, right? Those are all elements that are still getting started. And from a more technical analytics standpoint, what I see in various organizations is you see these CPG companies, or maybe it's electronics, maybe it's CPGs and so on. There's a lot of demand for connecting the various dots. You have ERP platforms like SAP. You have CRM like Sugar CRM and so on and so forth. But a lot of these end up becoming siloed within large organizations. Right? AI is enabling, to some extent, the ability to connect the dots. So when I think, what's going on with my marketing spend, with my digital media spend, and so on. Maybe I want to think about what's happening with my supply chain. Right? Am I spending in the right direction? Does my supply chain support that spend? Or am I just on allocation for a whole bunch of things that I'm spending money on, right, on my national media? So it's those efficiencies that most organizations are now trying to chase. My journey at Mars most recently before Ferrero was in fact exactly that. Right? It was a large digital transformation function across both pet care and their Wrigley confectionery side that was focused on trying to connect the dots, eliminate silos, and ultimately create efficiencies such that from the top of the organization to the bottom of the organization, you know what's going in store, what's available, what's being manufactured, what's being shipped, what's on a truck somewhere, and what are you spending your money on? Right? I think that's ultimately where we go with the future of AI. That's ultimately where we start seeing those efficiencies. That's where we start seeing a clearer picture of organizational spend across the board.
Yeah, good insights, Shiva. Thank you for sharing there. And we have some time for questions. But before we get into your questions, I just want to do an audience poll. A few questions here coming at you. For the marketers and brand innovators in the room, raise your hand if you're currently leveraging AI in your content creation workflows. Show of hands. All right. Keep your hands up if you have operationalized AI where you have a process, it's policy, it's governed, and it's something it's now routine. All right, for that, that's about 3/4 of those who had their hands raised originally. I want to ask what benefits you're seeing. Raise your hand if you primarily leverage AI because it allows you to create content faster. Is that a reason? How about to create more varied content, more variety of content? All right, and how about those that allows you to create more personalized or relevant content? Okay. In the process, of course. Yeah, thank you. Good to hear your perspectives here through a show of hands. So let's open it up for some questions. Questions of Shiva or myself or each other. What are some of your questions around the realm of content and AI?
Yes.
Hi, Arushi from Mastercard. You mentioned that you look at shopper experience in retail and online. But I also see that a lot of things are being sold through creators and influencers these days. So I was just wondering, in your experience at Ferrero or your older companies, how has AI been able to inform your social media strategy in particular?
Yeah, no, this is an excellent question. Social listening, I would say, is one of the things that most of these organizations are capitalizing on. And the social listening platforms, early on, most social listening analytics were relatively rudimentary, right, and picking up the right keywords and whatnot. But now it's not just picking up the right keywords, but it's pulling those right keywords and predicting what you want to go after with your social media posts and so on. When you look at influencers, right, more and more influencers are not necessarily creating their own original content. Rather, they're creating that content using AI, right? So it's a cycle that sort of feeds itself when you take the social listening aspect of it from most of these tools. And that's what I've seen across multiple organizations. And that what you pick up from social listening ultimately enables your content creators from a social media standpoint, influencers and such, to create the most relevant content.
When it comes to creating traditional content creation, I guess you could say, again, going back to the whole nerds clusters, right? That was a really special moment for y'all's gets in the Times and everything like that. Congratulations there with everything. I'm just curious how you kind of use AI to double down on that moment, right? Like, I'm assuming it was something that might have not been expected in the upfront, but certainly caught a lot of wind. So how are you using it to kind of, grow that lightning in a bottle or grow that flame a little bit more to have more life than that singular moment?
Yeah, excellent question. I'm going to answer this two-part. There's an opportunity in how we could have and can use it better, and how we did use it. So one of the things I'll say is this, right? It's an excellent example that you pointed to. When we had that unexpected takeoff, there's an opportunity to capitalize on social. There was an opportunity to capitalize on even shopper marketing spends, perhaps utilize AI to allocate. I mean, more and more you see these tools that enable incremental return on ad spend, ROAS, or return on investment, to enable more spend efficiently based on what's actually happening in the marketplace. Ferrero, for all its ups and downs, right? One of the shortcomings is that we're not quite there yet. We're not quite at that element of the journey where we were able to capitalize on AI. Right. I can tell you this, when I was working at Mars, those guys were closer to that, right? Much further into that journey. Ferrero is at a much more nascent stage of that journey. So we weren't quite able to capitalize on it from an AI standpoint, from a leverage AI standpoint. It was more everything that was done through the traditional recommendations from agency models and so on and so forth. So this is more, the way I would answer it is more, what could we do going forward? And that's the part where I would tap back into what are we doing on social, right? How can we connect our AI to our social or our social strategies rather to AI?
Hey, Jake, good to see you. You probably know what I'm going to ask. With all this, more and more generative AI content creation going on, how can brands from a brand protection perspective protect themselves? What can they do to make sure that they're protecting themselves from creating content that is either misusing content or infringing content, or violating compliance or rights or restrictions that they may have?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, and certainly relevant now as it is ever, but even more so now in the age of AI. And it comes down to some core good content governance principles, having content that is structured and cataloged and organized with its rights, its metadata, its uses and expiration dates, and all those things that protect how content is used and consumed. Even more so now, to make sure that it's validated and authentic and part of your right to use, and that's where content management and rights management solutions come into play in the world of brand management and AI. Anything you would add to that, Shiva?
Yeah, actually, I will add a couple things. Totally agree with what you said, Jake. I think it's as much as generative AI is great for creating content, it's also great for creating bad content, right? Or that's to that end, we see more and more of these platforms like Patu and the like that are coming up to reduce that content. I guess what's the right word? Content misuse, right? And verifying content is going to be a lot similar in the long run to verifying digital media spend. We used to, in the early days of digital media spend, how did you know you were getting real clicks, or how did you know you were just getting junk clicks, right? I think verifying content goes back to something of a similar nature, right? Where is that content being generated from? This is where metadata comes into play. So the right metadata, the right tagging, the right tools to track, all that is going to be a key element.
I have one extra question. Ferrero is always been, might have not been at the forefront of certain types of innovation. However, somehow, somewhat, you always got it right. If there was something that you would recommend that we would, what have you learned in the process of making certain decisions in the Ferrero recipe that you think it's generic enough for you to share, but at the same time powerful enough for us to get something from it?
Yeah, so this answer is not going to have anything to do with tech or AI. It's going to be a very down-to-earth answer, and it's generic enough, but as you asked, also specific enough. So one thing about Ferrero is some years ago, I think about a year or 2 years ago, I haven't been with Ferrero that long, but about a couple of years ago, they acquired Famous Amos, these cookies, right? Some of you might have heard of it, and fairly common enough name. Famous Amos, for a long time, had dropped off into this brand that wasn't necessarily considered a premium brand or anything like that. In some ways, a convenience store brand, right? C-store type of thing. So what Ferrero did is relaunch the product with a refreshed formula. Right? Ferrero's got this obsession with, I don't want to say obsession with perfection so much as obsession with creating a more premium product, right? Creating a product of true quality, and they believe in that. And their launch actually did not go that terribly well. Right? Their relaunch did not go that terribly well because that product was so trained to being that C-store brand that the higher price point, the change in actual product was not necessarily communicated well. Right? So they're going after it now, and they're relaunching it and so on. But long story short, whether it's Nutella, whether it's a Famous Amos, or whether it's the pralines that everybody loves, right? Ferrero's got a 90% market cap on essentially hazelnut, right? They control hazelnut production, distribution, all the way to 90%. So here's the thing. They have an obsession with creating a product that they're actually proud of. Whether they're picking up brands that are on the lower side of the C-store, lower side of the shelf or whatnot, they want to transform that into a brand, even if it comes at the cost of a higher price point. They want to transform it into a brand that they're proud of. Right?
This is extremely provocative of Ferrero, by the way. Guy, I know we got to the end of the session. I know I have the big axe here asking me to kind of wrap things up. So thank you very much, Jake. Thank you very much, Shiva.
Thank you.